Sisters and brothers, you may have noticed that the readings these past days have mostly been about banquets. What the banquet looks like, what we can expect about the banquet, and who are invited to the banquet. Our Lord Jesus Christ today continues to talk about the banquet, but he challenges us to expand our guest list to include not just those we regularly invite, our neighbors, our brothers and sisters, our wealthy friends, those who can repay us. He tells us to include even the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. Many of us might be thinking that's a very difficult challenge, and indeed it is. And some might even think it's unrealistic given our premium today on security and safety. So let me rephrase the challenge that Jesus gives us today. If you cannot, at this point in your life, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame to your banquet, perhaps you can do the next best thing, which is to go to their banquet, to go where they are. Because what's important, and this is the spirit of the invitation from Christ today, is not so much where the banquet is held, but who are there. Not so much what's prepared during the banquet, but who are part of your guest list. Many friends of mine ask me, Father, have you seen Coco Martin in Bilibid? And is the portrayal of Batang Quiapo of Bilibid accurate? My answer to that is no and no. No, I have not seen Coco Martin. I doubt if they really filmed their scenes there. And number two, no, because I fortunately or unfortunately do not watch telenovelas. So I don't know what's happening in that drama series. So I don't know if it's accurate or not. But what I do know is this. They are missing one very important event within the walls of Bilibid. And that is called dorm masses. We hold once or twice a week dorm masses. Yes, we do have big Sunday masses, which we hold in covered courts, which often involves about 200, 300 people. But these dorm masses are especially consoling because we go to where the inmates live in their dormitory. And often, the participants are in the 20s or 30s. The number of them are in their 20s and 30s. It's very intimate. You can imagine how their quarters look like. In a space where, let's say, only 10 people can be fit in, 20, 30, 40 people are there. And so you can imagine how dark, dingy the place can be, and yet that is where once or twice a week we bring the Eucharist. So that even if that is a situation they find themselves in, they still know and feel that God searches for them, goes to where they are, and the church is present where they are. Often, people think, good for you, Father. You bring God to them. You bring the Eucharist to them. Of course, that's true. But the many times we hold dorm masses in their quarters, I realize it's also them bringing God to us. It's not just us bringing the Eucharist to them. It is them, the Eucharist of God in the world, revealing to us the new or other face of God every day to us. So it's actually a mutual giving, a mutual affirmation of God's presence already there. And I hope that you can have that same experience so that when you go to where the banquet of the poor is, you will see, recognize, and celebrate another face of God, which we sometimes don't see, because we are locked in our small circles, the familiar places and people we go to. The invitation of Jesus in our gospel today is an invitation to expand our hearts so that there's room big enough both for God and His people, especially the least. And you will realize that God, when He invites us to His banquet, is telling us that I am very present in the least of my children. As mentioned in Matthew 25, when Jesus identifies Himself closely, intimately with those who are hungry, with those who are thirsty, with those who are naked without clothes, with those without shelter, and especially with those who are in prison. When you go to the banquet of the poor, you will realize that they have much to teach us about hospitality and big-heartedness, values that we may often neglect, take for granted, or even completely set aside. They, in a very real sense, are often the teachers of God's values, the harbingers of God's kingdom for us. And so, brothers and sisters, the feast is open for all. We are all invited, but we are also asked to expand our guest list, to include not just those we regularly invite, but more so those who can teach us so many things about God and Jesus. And when we partake of this banquet, when we include in our guest list the poor and those who cannot repay us, we will realize that the greatest reward of the banquet is not just what's there for the partaking, it's who are part of the partaking. All of us who are brothers